All right, guys, welcome to bonus number one, where we're going to talk about the tripwire technique, right? How to really subsidize your actual ad costs with a low cost kind of upfront offer to get people into your ecosystem, and then how to kind of capitalize on that and be more profitable downstream, kind of using that tactic. And then we're going to talk about the 6 underutilized psychological tricks that are going to instantly change your ads forever, right? And we're going to start with number one. We're going to get right into it, which is the value proposition, right? So highlight how you uniquely solve a difficult customer pain point. Learn how an Amazon seller quit his 9-to-5 cubicle job, right, which is kind of the pain point that people hate, that kind of 9-to-5, and they hate the idea of a cubicle, and now makes 1K per day selling weird everyday products on Amazon from the beach in Fiji, right? So that you're kind of solving the difficulty and the pain point of having that 9-to-5 cubicle, kind of like dreaded job in the dark, dingy cubicle, right? And then you're solving it by being on the beach in Fiji, kind of doing what you want, making $1,000 a day, which is kind of the threshold that a lot of people consider to be the amount to kind of be free, right? So value propositions, they can be a ton of different things, right? We're going to go through some examples to show some physical ads just to kind of see it and hammer it home a little bit more. So Uber is the smartest way to get around. One tap and a car comes directly to you. Your driver knows exactly where to go and payment is completely cashless, right? So these are kind of the pain points perfectly kind of made clear of a taxi, right? So, taxis, you kind of have to look for one or you have to call for one instead of just like tapping a button and it coming straight to you, right? Your driver knows exactly where to go rather than having to like put in like an awkward kind of GPS, if the taxi driver even has a GPS, or you have to talk to them. Sometimes you're in other countries and it just gets kind of like jumbled up, right? And then completely cashless. So some taxis, don't have credit card dispensaries or credit card kind of processing, and sometimes you don't have cash on you. So Uber very eloquently is kind of solving through a value proposition kind of all of the different customer pain points with its predecessor being the taxi, right? And so it's a very, very kind of beautiful simplistic way to really show kind of the customer of Uber's customers, how they're better than the previous kind of business that was dominant, and then how they're going to kind of uniquely displace those pain points associated with the previous business, which obviously is taxis. So value propositions include things like free shipping, right? Fast next day shipping, free bonus with a purchase, free setup installation, no setup fee, no long-term contract, cancel anytime, better than money back guarantees, license for multiple computers, a discounted price for a product, right? Customizable. So these are kind of small things that can be added that really wouldn't cost you much, but could be attractive to some buyers, right? Just ways to kind of differentiate yourself. And then really, guys, appealing to how your product solves a negative feeling that your customer has, right? This is a perfect example. People hate having to go find taxis or call them. People hate having to always have cash or, wondering if they're going to be able to pay via credit card. People hate, especially in other countries, and I personally have experienced this, which is why I always use Uber. I mean, I would anyways in the USA, but in other countries where there's a language barrier, it gets even more difficult, or you don't know the exact address of where you're trying to go, and GPS just makes everything so much simpler. And so really, guys, what we're trying to do with the value proposition is highlight how we uniquely solve a difficult customer pain point. So you got to figure out what the customer pain points are of your demographic. If you're selling an entrepreneurship product, probably the pain points are, having to go to work every day, maybe like a long commute, doing the same thing, pointless meetings, a cubicle, not having the financial freedom that you want, not being able to spend more time with your kids and your family. And so if you're selling an entrepreneurship product, one way to advertise it would be to outline the product features and say, we're 10 times faster than our competitors. Or you could say, spend more time with your family with one product, or as a result of one product, right? And so you have to really try to tap in to how you actually make your customers feel better and have a better life. That is the point of a value proposition ad. The next one, guys, is a cliffhanger. All right, so kind of give them a teaser, but hold back the rest really to get them to click. And so, curiosity is probably the biggest single driving force in advertising. I would say it definitely is actually, and clickbait, has kind of become like a household word just because of how much notoriety it's gotten, and a lot of that's kind of been driven by BuzzFeed and then predecessors and some fast followers of BuzzFeed, just because of how viral BuzzFeed has been able to kind of make content go on a consistent basis by really powerfully utilizing, a lot of the tactics in this particular bonus are BuzzFeed has become masterful at. And so we're going to be talking about BuzzFeed a couple of times. I tried to not only include their examples for the bonus, but a lot of their examples are very, they are very applicable to these 6 underutilized kind of psychological tactics that we're going to be appealing to. So do you want to know the only thing more powerful than curiosity? Right. And I bet you didn't even realize that, this sentence is obviously designed to kind of to make you understand kind of the power of curiosity. Because if you had written an ad, for example, that started with, do you want to know the only thing more powerful than, whatever you're trying to advertise, or curiosity, and people just yearn to know what the answer is to what's more powerful than curiosity. And so, playing off of curiosity, leading with a question are fantastic ways really to kind of get people to continue reading and like we've talked about before, pattern interrupt. So we can kind of take advantage of this in a good way, right? Shark Tank star and Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban reveals for the first time ever his most important and surprisingly simple morning ritual he credits much of his success to, right? And so this kind of does a number of different things. It instantly kind of establishes credibility with a household name, in Mark Cuban. Obviously, he's like known for being a billionaire entrepreneur who owns an NBA team. It mentions that it's never been seen before, kind of making it more desirable, just because everybody loves being in the know and knowing secrets and things like that. And everybody wants to kind of become financially successful, or most people do. And then, it also mentions how simple it is. And people love simplicity. Nobody wants to learn how to become a billionaire. Actually involves, 20 years of incredibly hard work and a bunch of really correct decisions and meeting the right people and having a significant amount of luck related to, what markets you choose to enter and how your businesses interact and things like that. And so, that's just kind of a cliffhanger. You like to kind of say, want to know the one thing that you need to do to be happy in life, right? Like there's infinite ways to kind of do it. And without going through a million different examples, I think kind of the following image really sums things up really well. Kind of the 3-word phrases with the most FB shares in BuzzFeed article titles. And these kind of sentences really kind of speak a lot to what people share. So let's actually talk about some of these. So which character are you, right? That's like a quiz. People love taking quizzes. Everybody loves to kind of find out some magical answer from like a 10-question quiz about how to be happy for the rest of their life, or, which character from some popular show that they'd be, and things like that. It's not really as applicable for cliffhangers or clickbait. 31 things only dads know, right? 10 things to do before you die. Could this possibly be the most unbelievable product of all time? You probably didn't know, right? Are the most in your life. All of these different phrases, when you're going to write a clickbait title kind of related to your product or service or whatever you're trying to advertise on Facebook, I would come back to this video and I would look at these kind of words here, and I would think to myself, how could I rewrite my clickbait title to include one of these, right? 31 things only moms know that they need to do before they die, right? You can mix and match multiple of them. But I mean, these are incredibly telling kind of metrics here. We can see that almost 100,000 shares, 70,000 shares. These are incredibly powerful kind of pieces of data that you can really utilize yourself, right? Blows your mind. X reasons, X signs, X most important. These just work incredibly well, and they shouldn't kind of be taken lightly, right? Yeah, and so that's kind of cliffhangers. They work incredibly well. If you've never experienced, the power of a clickbait title, make one on your ads and see how much they kind of change. Okay, so let's talk about lead magnets. We've discussed lead magnets a bunch with throughout the course, and so I think it's just kind of important to go through a few more actual examples, just to kind of hammer it home and to see it, because I think it needs to be kind of a little bit more tangible, really to understand it, rather than doing kind of generalized ideas. I always like to do much more kind of in the dirt. Showing you like literally how I would personally write it, so you can kind of apply it to your own business in the same way. So what most real estate agents don't realize is that it takes a lot more work to sell 20 moderately priced homes than it does to sell 2 luxury homes. Click below to see the 13 reasons why most real estate agents never get rich, never before released. Right, and so this is just a great way, and it's a good lead magnet itself, right? To create like some Word document or like a a nicely designed PDF of the 13 reasons why most real estate agents never get rich. And you could make this whatever you want. I'm sure we could find cheat sheets or something, or blog articles or videos or something related to this exact topic anyways, if we wanted to get ideas. Again, we're never trying to reinvent the wheel here. It's just a perfect lead magnet for real estate agents who want to see what the secret is behind being a successful real estate agent, because that's kind of the number one thing most real estate agents want to be. They want to be successful. It's also a good curiosity point, because most real estate agents kind of deal with lower value homes, and they've never really sold a luxury home. So like, if you sold 10 $100,000 homes and you're getting a 2% commission on that versus, one $10 million home with a 2% commission, it's a very different kind of mathematical game when you're selling luxury homes, right? And so it would obviously be significantly more profitable if they kind of knew how to sell them. And obviously it seems a little bit exclusive, and people love exclusivity. They like to feel like they're important. That's why VIP exists, and that's why people pay significantly more to sit at a table 20 feet in front of an average person table. They pay $1,500 versus a $5 entry fee, because people like to feel exclusive and they like to feel important. Okay, so can you solve this ancient riddle? 98% of people gave the wrong answer. Only geniuses can solve this. And I realize that this particular piece of ad copy is not necessarily applicable to every person's product or business, but I included it because these types of copy with the right kind of graphics have the most unbelievable engagement rates and kind of engagement rates and click-through rates that I've ever seen for any type of ads. And if you have a company that has you're selling like a brain supplement or something that people make all the time, or like you have educational products or something like that, this is a great lead magnet to get people into your ecosystem and then upsell them some type of brain stimulator or booster or supplement or whatever it is, or your educational product, or like some educational product for their kids or something like that. And you can kind of mix in people who like these types of riddles and games, that also with parents with kids that are super young, and they're worried about them developing and becoming intelligent, because every parent kind of wants that. And then you could leverage that with another type of quiz to kind of continue it. Of the 1% that could correctly solve that puzzle, only 1% of that 1% could tell me XYZ about XYZ product, right? And just kind of like lead them down the funnel. So 99% of real estate agents were unable to guess the price of this home in San Diego. You'd be shocked to know what it sold for. So this is kind of a combination of both, right? So everybody wants to be in the 1%. Everybody wants to feel smart. Everyone wants to feel intelligent. Everyone wants to be able to get the answer right? And then also kind of utilizing the curiosity invoking element, right? You'd be shocked to know what it's sold for. So people are not only, wanting to feel intelligent and get the answer correct, which everyone kind of does, but they're also, innately curious to know what it's sold for as well. And so this is just a great kind of ad copy that, really perfectly kind of appeals to a few of the different kind of lessons that we've learned in this module, or in this bonus, excuse me. So people who charge up front, guys, like I've said throughout this whole course, stay poor, and people who build an audience, following, list, relationship, rapport, and then monetize downstream get rich, right? And so it's very difficult kind of to spend money without feeling like you're getting any money back. But if you're doing it correctly and you have kind of a horizontally related, upsell and or a high-end product or high ticket product or even like a low ticket product in volume that you can sell people downstream that people have already proved that they're interested in that specific topic or even a horizontally related topic. And once you've kind of built that relationship, you're able to capitalize on it downstream. So let's talk about memorability. I think this was one of the best kind of ad campaigns because nobody cares about anything more from an advertising perspective than themselves, right? And so I remember reading an article about this newspaper mogul who kind of said that if he could print 100% of his newspaper just as specific people's names and sentences about them, he would do that because it would sell that many more copies. But it just wasn't feasible to actually put people's names because there's just so many people who read his newspaper that he couldn't make it personalized anymore. And so Coke did a really amazing thing, and being such a behemoth of a company, making such kind of like a ground-shattering increase in their sales just from something so simple. So Coca-Cola basically just put names on each of the bottles, right? And it began in Australia, and Coke actually personalized each bottle with the 150 most popular names in the country. And the USA kind of did the same thing, printing just the first name on the front of the bottle. And you can actually order custom bottles on Coke's website also, but really, people just were enchanted by it. It was so magical seeing something as such a staple, and it was so memorable seeing something as such like a staple as Coca-Cola, right? We're so used to seeing the bottles being a certain way. The branding, it's evolved slightly, but it's always kind of maintained its core kind of feel. But seeing a Coca-Cola bottle with Kevin on it, right, or whatever the name might be, was just incredible. And Coca-Cola really took advantage of that by appealing to the masses. Everybody wanted to see something that was personalized to them, right? And if you can make it memorable, you can just absolutely count on the profit, right? Because people need to be able to remember something, and maybe they saw an advertisement for your product, but if it's not memorable, and they're maybe you sell like a garage door opener, right? And they see your ad and they're like, go about their day. And then 2 months later, they need a garage door opener, right? And they're like, oh, I saw an ad for that, but I can't remember the name of the company. And then, your advertisement is now pointless, right? So let's go through some examples to kind of make it a little bit more illustrative. Our mission is to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth versus we want to be the best space exploration company, right? And so our mission is to land a man, right, a human being on the moon and return him safely to Earth. And some of you might recognize where this is from. Versus we want to be the best space exploration company, right? This is very boring. It doesn't kind of paint a picture where it's not like human. We're not talking about a feat of landing a human being on a celestial body and then also returning him safely to Earth. This just doesn't portray anything that I'll remember. We want to be the best company just means nothing. You want to paint a picture because people think and remember in metaphors and analogies, and getting your message across in a memorable way, has the most powerful implication because, people talk about it. And if you can get people to talk about your ad, then you've already won so much more deeply and vastly than any other advertiser out there, right? And the Harmon brothers, when we talked about, in module 6 about how to scale and be fun and kind of think outside the box and be creative and, really kind of take your quality in video and things like that to the next level, the Harmon brothers do a fantastic job. Harmon being Harmon, I believe. Harmon brothers. They do a fantastic job. They did like the Squatty Potty advertisement where like the unicorns like pooping out rainbow sherbet, and like it's just like ridiculous stuff, but people talk about it, it's memorable, and it works. Right. Another example, you could say something like, only 20% of employees had a clear idea of the company mission. Or you could say, if our company was a basketball team, only one out of five players would know where the basket was. Right. And so like literally you're saying 20% of the basketball team wouldn't even know where the basketball hoop was. Right. That's a much more kind of memorable analogy than saying, 1 out of 5 employees didn't know the company mission. Right. Or you could say, movie popcorn contains 15 grams of fat, or, people can't really conceptualize 15 grams. Like I can't even conceptualize 1 gram of fat. I've never seen specifically 1 gram of fat. Or you could say movie popcorn contains more fat than a Big Mac, a large fry with enough fat left over to fill a regular sized soda can to the top with pure lard. right? And like I just made that up. I obviously don't know this for sure, but it's just much more kind of memorable because we can actually picture what a Big Mac looks like. Most people, and we can picture what a large fry looks like, and we know that it's greasy, and we know that it's like delicious, but we know that it's kind of unhealthy. And then everybody kind of knows you're kind of establishing a baseline because most people have seen a soda can, and picturing a soda can full of fat, like just like the disgusting kind of greasy fat or lard, is very, very disgusting. Obviously, and being able to picture it and associate it with things that you already kind of know about is a beautiful way to make people remember things, right? It's kind of similar, like if we were a company that rented a boat, right? Like we rented out boats when boat owners were on vacation. You could say something like it's like the Airbnb for boats, right? It's very memorable. All right, so numbered lists. And so, BuzzFeed is definitely kind of the king of numbered lists. We can literally see just one of the kind of gift guides sections of their site. Literally, 5 out of the 6 are directly numbered lists with like random numbers here: 37, 32, 34, 31, 38, which is crazy, right? 31, 37, 21. And I'm sure they split tested, and these random numbers probably are the best versions. But, the top 37 reasons why every single person on earth loves numbered lists, you won't believe number 23. Right, so they really popularized this, and people want to see these reasons, and then they also want to see your recommendation, right? This is why when like a software company has 3 different options, there'll be one in the center that says recommended, and I guarantee you that like 90% of people choose the one that's recommended because they trust recommendations. People trust recommendations, especially if there's social proof or if like the cost or like the value makes sense of the features you get and things like that. And so when you as the author, right, the source of authority in this case, suggest number 23 and you won't believe it, or like our favorite is number 21 or whatever, people want to see what that is. And so it's kind of combining curiosity with numbered lists. Everybody loves like a good organized numbered list in a chaotic world, right? Everybody loves top 5s, top 10s. That's why people search top 10 movies of 2017. People think in multiples of 5, but people love just like numbered lists of any size because it's much more organized, and it has a nice feeling of simplicity, right? So let's look at a few examples. 7 reasons over 100,000 people all over the world use this one little known herb to instantly lose weight and become 10% happier. So this is a numbered list right here, 7 reasons, right? There's an instant credibility here. Over 100,000 people all over the world use us. And then this one little known herb, right? So people are curious what it is. And then to instantly lose weight, right, which is a pain point. Nobody, people who are overweight, their pain point is being overweight, and their desire is losing weight. And then also to become 10% happier. So this is literally like kind of in a single sentence, utilizing every single psychological or most of the psychological tricks that we're talking about. And so it's really beautiful, right? Let's talk about a few more of these. The top 3 ancient tactics Gandhi teaches to find true happiness. Number 2 surprised us, right? And so when I think of happiness, I think of Gandhi. There's probably some other people that other people think about, but to me, when I think of happiness, I think of true happiness, and I think of Gandhi, kind of who's happier than a monk, right? They've given up all physical possessions, they've given up all kind of the normal human pleasures, they've given up money and things like that, and they seem to be happier than a lot of the richest people that I know. Number 2 surprised us. Right, so again, people love top 3s. Who do you think about when you think of happiness, right? The social proof and credibility that Gandhi has here. Very kind of easy to digest. Combines the curiosity elements as well. Number 2 surprised us. People love, when you tell them, or like number 2, or like our favorite was this, or like you'll be shocked by number 31 or whatever. Like people they need to know what that specific one is, and it just works like crazy. And if you guys don't believe me, then you try it for yourself and you'll see, because it's seriously, clickbait kind of got a bad rep because it just works so well. And just because we know what clickbait is as marketers does not mean that the mass market knows what it is. And it just works because human psychology is not going to change just because people know what clickbait is. They're not going to just all of a sudden be able to turn off, their innate instinctual kind of desire to know the unknown. It just doesn't work like that. Right. The last one is plain insulting, but still hilarious. You don't want to miss number 19. BuzzFeed kind of popularized this. If you guys want to, learn more or get more examples, just go look at BuzzFeed's site, because literally every single one of their articles is all entirely either numbered lists, catering to curiosity, or one of the kind of one, if not more than one, of the psychological kind of little strategies that we're talking about in this particular section. They're using, many of them. Um, so unexpected, curiosity invoking, and shocking via surprise, right? So this is a fantastic one. One child is holding something that's been banned in America to protect them, and guess which one it is, right? So if I don't know if you can see this, but it's like showing the little Kinder eggs, like the little chocolate eggs that got banned. I think they got banned because they had like little like toys inside of them that kids could potentially choke on or something like that. And it's just very shocking because like this girl's holding a gun, for example, and it's just like, look at her like little serious face, and she's like this enormous gun that's like bigger than she is, and there's like this little simple or this little innocent looking little guy right here holding a little chocolate egg, and one of these is banned in America and the other isn't, right? So it's just very shocking. It's a very kind of beautiful kind of relativism comparing those two products, and people are going to share that, and people are going to be interested in that because it's meant to be like ridiculous, I guess. Depending, and I'm not trying to say how I feel about guns being banned, but it's meant to seem ridiculous that this huge assault rifle is not banned and this little chocolate egg is. So let's watch just one kind of example here. I think this is a good one.
Yeah. All right.
This is like a beautiful couple that are like obviously happy. Like the obvious pain that she's seeing her husband fly out of the window or whatever. And then in real life, you don't get a second chance, right? And so there's a lot of kind of advertisements, but I think this seatbelt one really kind of resonated with me most because I remember seeing these on TV. And just like most car commercials kind of will start with like a happy family or whatever, and like it'll like talk about like the benefits of a minivan. But then like these ad campaigns came out and kind of duplicated those same kind of initial feelings that people had. And then, once they kind of lulled you to sleep thinking it was another minivan commercial, all of a sudden there was like this enormous like chaotic crash where everyone died, right? And then like it was like saying just wear a seatbelt and like this black, and you're like, oh my god, right? And like those shocks like make you kind of think about it next time. If you were going to choose to not wear a seatbelt, it's like, do you want to feel those emotions and the pain and things that you just saw of that nature, right? So let's talk about a few kind of examples in text. There's a new drug sweeping the teenage community, and it may be in your own medicine cabinet, right? So like these kind of clickbaity titles mixed with kind of the shocking, right? Like a lot of concerned parents might be like, oh my god, like there's a new drug sweeping across the teenage community, and we have it in our house. Like we have to figure out what it is, right? That's a shock. It's kind of guaranteed to make a lot of parents who are concerned with drugs and their children, which is most parents, kind of open the article in question just to figure out what it is, right? So it kind of combines a couple of the different ideas here. There's a new cure from leading European doctors for chronic back pain, and you might have one in your closet, right? So again, these are all kind of utilizing the same tactics, the IRS scam that is costing everyday people their life savings and how to avoid it. I just did a quick kind of Google search and found the headline below. And, the point of me saying that, guys, is kind of to understand that, major newspapers and even, magazines and online publishers, right? Like all the major newspapers have a website now, and that's probably where we consume most of our content from them. We can get a lot of ideas and we can get a lot of kind of inspiration, like I've been saying, throughout the whole course, guys, because I can't teach you every single way to advertise, but I can teach you how to kind of change your mindset to see how everyone else is advertising. Because the New York Times and Huffington Post and all of these other major news corporations, have hundreds of people employed who've been doing this for years, and we're reading these articles and being exposed to this content every single day. And if we're not realizing kind of the tactics that they're using in their headlines and how they're getting us to click, and then, kind of starting to be, instead of a viewer, be an actual advertiser, right? A researcher, kind of how can I use what they're using on me, on my customers, right? How can I kind of use psychology, human psychology? How can I use curiosity? How can I use all of these different tactics, right? Ethically, obviously, to make people interested, to make people click. Because the point of an advertisement at the end of the day is to get someone to click, and then the point of your landing page is to get someone to take the next action, right? And that's kind of how the funnel goes. And so that, guys, is the unexpected, right? Curiosity invoking and shocking via surprise, right? Didn't see that coming. No one does. United and visual, right? Us against the man. So us against the man is kind of what comes to my mind is cigarette campaigns. So like Truth, for example, when I was growing up, they did a fantastic job. Like I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, probably a lot because of my parents, but definitely secondarily from the Truth campaigns. And they were so masterful at really making you think that the corporations were evil, right? Like David versus Goliath. The big evil kind of nameless, faceless, big white, scary looking, ominous buildings of these evil, corporations that just wanted to like kill like kids and people, and they didn't care as long as they made money, right? And Truth did such a fantastic job of kind of transgressing beyond just statistics, because smoking kills 1,000 people a day. I, Obviously that's terrible, right? But I can't conceptualize that. I can't picture 1,000 people, in like a huge room all being killed by smoking. People are just not really able to conceptualize this. They kind of need to see it and feel it in a much more personal way. And so, one of the things that the Truth did, and I remember this commercial so clearly still, was they started out with a number of different people kind of in like a semi truck, and like they went in front of this big white kind of ominous looking building with no faces or names or anything like that, and they had people come out in suits, I think, and like they blurred out like the people's heads, so they just kind of looked like these corporate workers that just wanted to like kill us for money, basically, as being the kids. And what happened was the big semi truck, for example, had a bunch of like people of Truth workers and things like that, and they were carrying out these like huge like things, and you couldn't quite see what it was at first, and they were stacking them in these huge like kind of piles, and what you realized was that they were body bags. Right. And so like they were literally showing physically, how many body bags per day are being killed by smoking. And there were these enormous piles. Right. And so I linked a bunch of cigarette ads here that I think are kind of important, and like kind of the us versus the man, like the united kind of visual, emotional kind of connection. It just works so well when you're trying to kind of start a movement, for example, because people love to feel kind of, like the grassroots campaign, right? People love to feel kind of as like the underdogs and like rally behind one another and kind of unite against like the evil machine, like Rage Against the Machine, right? So, I mean, this is a perfect example. Smoking isn't just suicide, it's murder, right? So like it's saying that it's obviously suicide also, which is, something that is probably terrible to most people. And it's also murder, right? Because like secondhand smoke is like killing your kid, like literally suffocating him. And like what a more powerful image could you ask for than literally like a bag over a child's head who's crying and obviously in pain. It's just a very visual, and the more visual and shocking elements that you can combine with curiosity, with kind of all of the different tactics that we've talked about, guys, in unison. We don't need to we don't need to use these one at a time. We can use multiple of them, right? They're all kind of important tactics, and they can be used alone, but being used in combination to kind of form seriously powerful ads is something that is just so important to kind of develop in your arsenal, and kind of just get used to writing your advertisements in these ways, with value propositions, with curiosity invoking elements, shock factor, memorability, so people are shocked by it, and it's also memorable. So if they do need your product or service later in the future, they remember the name of your company, they remember who you are, and then they can actually associate you with what they need, and then they'll actually convert to being a purchase. But if you're not memorable, if you're not kind of using these tactics, then you're just going to fall kind of into the sea of other advertisements, because nowadays people get hit by ads every single day, all day long, on their phones, on the TV, on the radio, right? Everywhere kind of. So you really have to stand out and be creative and really like move outside of the box, and utilize the visual elements and all of the things that we've discussed. And if you can kind of master these guys, then it's going to work. And that's the simple truth. And if you ever feel like you don't have any kind of motivation, or you don't have any ideas, or you're overwhelmed at where to start, then take a look at the people who are already doing it, right? Like BuzzFeed. Take a look at news from the New York Times. Look at the headlines. See what elements of those headlines you can use on your own products or services, right? Never ever feel like you have nowhere to start, because there's so much content for us to get kind of inspiration from. And even in this bonus alone, there's a ton of different kind of headlines and ad copy for you guys to take a look at. And so that, guys, is the 6 underutilized psychological tricks that will instantly change your ads forever. So let's talk about what a tripwire is. So a tripwire, guys, is basically it's something to get people in the door. It's something of immense value that people get for a cost that is significantly less than they would expect to pay for it, kind of, right? And so it's basically a tactic where the cost of advertising to bring new customers in, kind of a cold audience, is entirely or subsidized or partially paid for by what's called a tripwire. So, have you ever gone to a piece of software and you get like a 14-day free trial, or like $1 for like a collection of 3 ebooks of like a $90 value or whatever, right? So that is what's called a tripwire. Some people call it a self-liquidating offer. It's just kind of a way to get people to do what's called a micro commitment. And micro commitments work incredibly well because micro commitments, like for example, if you were selling, a $1,000 software package, and you were saying, you can get a 14-day trial completely for free for $1, right? So like they've already paid, they've kind of already committed in that microscopic way by paying to your company once. It's so much easier to get somebody to pay again, even if it's only $1. It's just the mental process of paying. It is very difficult to kind of get someone to do, but once you've done it, even in a small way, it's so much easier to get them, to become a repeat customer. Similarly, with a tripwire, like MailChimp is a perfect example. If you don't know what MailChimp is, look them up. They're an autoresponder. And what they decided early was they were going to give completely free service if you had less than 1,000 subscribers, right? So you could send as many emails as you wanted forever if you had less than 1,000 subscribers. And what this allowed them to do, and how they became a market leader, was everybody chose their product because everyone else was trying to charge up front, right, to people to send emails straight away, like a monthly fee or whatever the case may be. And why would you pay $79 a month for something that you could get for free? And what they didn't realize was that MailChimp was charging, slightly more. It's become more similar now. But like their monthly charges, once you went over 1,000, were actually more expensive than these other competitors that, like MailChimp would charge $90 a month when the other competitors would charge $70 a month for the same service up till 5,000 subscribers. But what MailChimp was able to do was they dominated the market because people really get hooked on autoresponder software because it's integrated in all of their websites. Their email templates are all designed and saved within MailChimp. And so people were kind of getting into the ecosystem for free. And then once like their businesses started to grow and they got to subscriber bases over 1,000, right, they were already so kind of ingrained and hooked into MailChimp. And, they had been lured in by that, tripwire of immense value for free or for a very cheap price. But they were already kind of too committed to MailChimp to change, right? Because it would have been so much work to change that it was worth it to them to pay slightly more to MailChimp for a monthly fee than they would have been paying elsewhere, right? And it kind of let them get their feet wet. It kind of let them understand how to use it and things like that. So that, guys, is a tripwire. The point of a tripwire is really to get people into your ecosystem, like we've been talking about. Like a lead magnet and a tripwire have a lot of similarities. Lead magnets are generally just free, and tripwires generally have at least some cost just to kind of get like that micro commitment, for example, or even to recover some ad cost. We've run campaigns where we're paying $40 per conversion, for example, like for my course. And so what we would do is we would, piece together, 3 like awesome pieces of content, like, the Facebook ad compass, or, the Instagram blueprint, or things that we kind of determined that our target market wanted, right? And if you don't know what your target market wants, ask. Right? Like, what are the 3 hardest parts about losing weight? What's the one most difficult part about, running a small business, or or starting a website, or getting started on YouTube? And then write these things down, right? And then create that lead magnet, or what you can, transition into a tripwire based off of the feedback that you get from your target audience. And so then, what we did was we took those lead magnets and, what we eventually called a tripwire, and we charged $47 for them, right? And there was a ton of value. They were worth so much more than $47. But just by those people, coming into our ecosystem, after the webinar, for example, they would buy, the tripwire that we don't offer anywhere else. They would buy the tripwire, And after buying the tripwire, that was a huge micro commitment because they'd already kind of purchased something from me. And then the upsell would actually be my course, right? And so like, not everybody obviously converted, but every time somebody bought that $47 product and, we were paying $40 per conversion, that was actually generating free money. Like our advertising campaign for our actual product was free. Every dollar that we spent in ads, we were actually getting more money back from our tripwire sales, even if those people that bought the tripwire didn't actually purchase our end product, which was actually the course as the upsell, right? And so that is the tripwire, guys. Kind of using kind of a cheaper upfront offer to kind of make your Facebook ad campaigns for free. And so that, guys, is bonus number 1, the 7 most underutilized kind of psychological tactics with examples, showing you actual tangible kind of advertisements, teaching you, where to actually look for other examples related to, psychological tactics and tricks and how to get people actually to click on advertisements. And then we discuss, the idea of a tripwire or a self-liquidating offer, how to get free Facebook advertising campaigns by giving away a huge amount of value for a low-cost product to recover your advertising cost. And then at the same time, kind of micro commitments. Once somebody pays something from you, even if it's $1, right? Once they enter the ecosystem, once they've taken out their wallet, it's infinitely easier to get them to make a secondary purchase or an upsell, right? And so that, guys, is bonus number 1. I hope you enjoyed it, and let's get to the next.